Hi everyone, I'm Arati Devasher. Welcome to my studio. Today I will be filling the last 2 pages in this sketchbook, which I've had since 2015 when I won it in a competition. And I have steadily filled the pages since then, usually taking it out and about with me. But I thought I'd finish it in 2019, so that's 4 years of having this little sketchbook. But I didn't, so I still have a few pages left, and it is now the end of 2020, and I'm going to fill it. So I'm going to film it. This is my Strathmore Artist Styles 400 series sketchbook. I won this in a Creative Bug and Lisa Congdon contest back in 2015, so it was quite a while ago. And I won it because when I was taking Lisa's sketchbook, I think it was a sketchbook class on Creative Bug, I painted on a silk scarf instead of doing it in a sketchbook. So a few of us won, and this was the scarf that I made, and that obviously I kept for myself. Someday I'll make some more, I guess, but this was it. And I started the sketchbook almost the day that I got it. I don't actually remember the first picture that I did because at that point I didn't number or date any of my sketches. So I just covered my details here. Oops, that just popped off. But I think this may have, it says 19, so maybe not. So there are quite a lot of drawings in here. And this was an easy sketchbook to sort of carry around. As you can see, it says, I thought I would finish it in 2019, but I ended up not finishing it. There were still a few pages left, so I scratched it out for 2020. And now here we are at the end of 2020 in December, and I'm actually going to finish it now. So you might be watching this video much later, but this is the end of December, just before Christmas. And I'm finally going to finish that page, which I have marked with this little fan brush. So this is the only spread left in the sketchbook. So I'm going to fill it, and then I'll give you a quick tour of the rest of the sketchbook. It is quite a long, there are quite a few pages, so it would be quite a long video. So what I will do is I'll give you a quick overview now, and then I'll do a separate video where I just run through the sketchbook and maybe comment on things. So let's do that. So it is, as I said, a Strathmore Artist Styles 400 series. Takes watercolor all right, which is what I've realized. And I always write on the back of a sketchbook what it did. In case I ever want to buy it again, then I know that this was good for these things. So not much bleed through with marker, paint, fountain pen, brush pen markers, and very smooth for pencil work. Now this is a book that I carry usually when I'm on the tube. When we did travel. On the tube, it fits easily in my bag. It's a super lightweight thing. It has wire binding so that I can just fold a page like that and work on it on my lap. So a lot of the paintings in this are simple pencils, and then I've colored in with gouache later on. So like these would probably have been done on the tube or sitting somewhere waiting, very often at the doctor's office, and then I would have colored it in later. So I just flipped through. This probably was a class that I took, drawing noses, testing my Faber-Castell artist pens. So yeah, a bunch of stuff. This one you've seen on Instagram, I think. And there is a fair bit more to color in here, so I will probably revisit this sketchbook at some point and rework some of the pages. But for now, let's concentrate on this one. So let me put my fan brush back. And usually in this sketchbook, I just start drawing directly with my color pencils, and then I add marker if I feel the need for it. So I'm going to start with, these are Laurentian color pencils, and they are Canadian. I got this particular set of pencils, all these ones here, when I was about maybe 15 or 16 years old. They were a gift from my aunt, and I have retained them to date. And as you can see, I don't work often with pencils because I've got a lot of them left. But they are really nice pencils, and I've done a fair few pieces with them. So let's get started with this one. And I hope they'll last me a good few years yet. I have been using them more of late, so some of them have really been sort of worn down. You can see quite a bit shorter. And I think some of the colors that I use more often are almost half the size. And then obviously the colors, black for example, that's just a graphite pencil. Black one is almost half the size. So put that graphite one back where it belongs. Let's start with this one. And today I actually want to draw some fruits and vegetables. I want to draw a papaya because I do like papayas quite a lot. And I've just got one in my kitchen, so I've been a little bit inspired by it. and it's kind of a weirdly odd shape. So it's an Indian papaya, not one of the tiny little ones that you get at Sainsbury's or Tesco's. I did get it at the Indian grocery store, and that's one of the things that I love visiting there for. Now, it's not purple, but I'm interested in more in the shape. Sorry, I can't speak today. I'm interested more in the shape than I am in the actual color, because I would like to use this shape in my work somewhere. And then when you cut it open that way, it still retains that odd shape, but in the middle it has this sort of gooey mess of the seeds. And that's the part that starts to get interesting, because the shapes of the seeds, I always actually used to consider these seeds very, very gross when I was a child. I just thought they looked shiny and sticky and gooey and absolutely disgusting. But as I've grown, and I really do like papaya, as I've grown, that kind of ick feeling has gone away. And I retain only the interest in the fruit for eating it, obviously, and also for the color and for the shape and the form of it. Some would say this is very reminiscent of a certain body part, but for me, the association with the fruit is less about that and more about the memories that I have of eating it on hot summer days back when I lived in India. I am Indian born and bred, and I've only lived in the UK for the past 10 or 11 years, and I think this is our home now, but I still do remember those days with very fond thoughts and memories. So that's the inside of the papaya, and suddenly it also has a border, but suddenly you find that that's a far more interesting shape than that one. So there we go, there's that. And then when you cut the papaya, then you have a sort of shape like that, like once you've got rid of the seeds, then you have a shape like that, but then at this side it's slightly thicker, and then it tapers towards that end when you cut it. And then you have the green edge, which obviously I think you shouldn't eat. It's not like some mangoes where you can actually eat the peel. And then that part is the part that you eat, and you chop it up. And then if you draw it slightly 3D, that also tapers in. And that has a squarish section. At least that's how I cut them. And then sometimes they also have a little sticker on it saying where they came from, right? I always find that fascinating, because you imagine that papayas are only grown in your country, and then you suddenly realize that they're importing it from somewhere else, and it's not actually native to your country at all. Anyway, so that's the papaya bits. And then when you chop up the papaya, it just goes into little square bits like that. So I'm really just exploring all the shapes of the papaya as they pertain to me and the way that I eat them. And you can also, I believe, make papaya jam, although I've never tried that, and it might be interesting to try. But you also get little papayas, which I might just draw just for the sake of it, because I get very annoyed when I order papayas from Sainsbury's and they turn up and they're these tiny little things where you hardly get one bowl of papaya fruit out of the whole thing. Very, very annoying. Anyway, here you go. There's that. So that's what I wanted to do on this page, and I'm actually going to use my pens here. This was, I think, gifted to me. I don't even know if they're a branded brush pen, but they have a brush pen on one side, pretty nice. And then they have a thin pen on the other side, which I hardly ever use. I think I just use it for writing cards and things. But I really like them, and they blend well. And when I'm doing stuff in my sketchbook like this, then I use this. If I'm doing more fancy stuff, then I'll use my Pitt Artist's pens. So I'm going to try this one. I think this will be a nice color for the papaya. Yeah, for the inside. Look at that. Nice. And I like the texture that it gives. And I might actually do a full painting based on papayas. I find them fascinating at the minute. So there's that, and you can see I've got marker on the other side as well, and some random feet, but it doesn't actually show through, this is a really good paper for that kind of thing. And then this papaya as well. I'm not doing too much shading because I just like a slight abstractedness to these pieces, because I don't want to define too much. I just like it to be as is, and then use my imagination later on to transform it into something, perhaps. These sides a bit darker than the top. And then use a sort of greeny color. Maybe that one, too bright perhaps. Maybe a sap green. Maybe a sap green. Yeah, that's kind of nice to do that border. And then it also does blend into a yellowy tone. So I'm going to try and use a kind of orangey yellow to blend in, which kind of blends in with the papaya as well. And then these little papayas are always green. They never are purely ripe. They're always kind of just a little bit under, which is another thing I really, really hate. So I'm just going to give them a kind of like lemony green color, like so. And they always have a tiny bit of yellow just to like tantalize you, right? A little bit there. And then use the main green for the rest of it. There we go. And I'm just going to use this green to go over the whole thing and sort of blend it a little bit more. Like so. And then I generally use a really light color to give it a little bit of a border or something like that. Oh, I've forgotten to do the green one of that. And then because this one sticks up a little bit, just give it a bit of 3D. Make that a bit of a... Just grounds it a little bit more, doesn't it? Maybe this one gets it as well. And then maybe a lighter green. Would that work? No, it's too dark. I don't think I have a really light green in this set of markers. Nope, too blue. How about this one? That's kind of nice. Those are almost exactly the same. And then because it's an Indian papaya, it is much more yellowy orange than any other color. Like that, leaving out the label. Then take that really pale blue that I took out before. Oh, it's not pale blue at all. Glossed. Maybe that one. Oh, that's too dark as well. But taking that and blending it out a little bit more. That's my Indian papaya. I'm going to leave the label because I'm not really interested in that one. So that's that page filled. Now I literally have just one page left. Haha! What shall I draw on this? Now, other than the papayas, I'm very interested in lemons. But I think I've already got a lemon page in this somewhere. I think we did pass it, didn't we? Oh, yeah, we already have a lemon page, so I already have a reference for that. What else shall I draw? Shall I just do maybe... Actually, avocados the other thing I was interested in recently, because they have several different interesting recipes that I would like to draw. So the avocados also, it's actually a good shape to draw on this page because it's a very similar shape to the papaya. So let's draw that. Avocados have a round belly, like that. And this shape is going to be repeated quite a lot because the avocado itself has that belly inside as well. It doesn't have too much of a difference. The only thing it has is a big, what in Tamil Nadu you'd call a kotte, which is a seed. Like that. I mean, there's not very many words that I use in daily parlance. English is my mother tongue, but Tamil sometimes expresses it better, I guess. It's just a thing. I guess if you are multilingual, you just find that a certain language expresses a word better than another language might. And then you tend to use that for that. And then I also like the way that it looks sideways because you've cut the avocado really straight. So you've got the kotte or the seed sticking out like that. And then you've got a really straight top. And then almost like a lyre at the bottom. That's how it looks. Seed sticking up. And the seed is brown, so I'm just going to color that in with my pencils. And then obviously when you cut it like so. And then you use it on like sandwiches and things. Or you have slices like this. 3-dimensional a little bit. And you also have the seed, which apparently you can plant. Like if you put a toothpick through it like this and rest it on a glass of water, you can actually get it to sprout and give you fresh avocados. I'm just going to put, I don't have any space here, so avocado. As though I don't know what it is, but you know, it's kind of fun to put that out there. And it has a really dark green color, so that's not quite it, but I think that will probably do. Just going to use that. And then I'll use black to mix with it. Actually, that's turned out quite well on the outside. I have a tendency to move my book around as I work, but it's kind of annoying to watch, isn't it? It becomes a little bit awkward. So a little bit of a highlight there. This is how fast I usually work in my sketchbook, because I'm just thinking of ideas. I'm not really thinking of how shall I draw this, or how am I going to finally use this piece somewhere. I'm just ideating, just thinking about things, and putting ideas in place that I've thought about for quite a long time that I may want to use somewhere, right? And because this color works really well, I'm just going to like use a slightly darker section there, and it makes it a little more 3-dimensional around the outside if I go over it a couple of times. Yeah, a little bit more, let's say 3D-ish. So I don't want my pencils anymore, but I do need a sort of limey, lemony green. That's too bright. That's a bit better, isn't it? Let's use that one. So let's use that for the inside of the yellow. I would probably use a more minty green eventually, but for now this is easier to express the idea that I've got in my head. And then obviously the cut pieces. And you can see I'm using sideways strokes on this, whereas I used long strokes on that, because it is a sort of like choppy feel to that. And then this one, because it's a single piece, I'd rather use long strokes. And because I've darkened that area, I can use the same green, but it looks darker. And then and then it's got this bit. And then the pit, I'm going to use deep brown for that. Let's give it a bit of highlight. And then darken some sections. And then the same with this. And this one. Darken it there. A bit more. A bit next to the highlight so you can actually see the details. I'm going to just use a dark ochre kind of thing or this limey thing for the toothpick. Like that. Now there I've got a bunch of ideas that I can use in my future paintings and work. That all I have to do is kind of refer to this later on. And I'll usually know what I'm thinking or what I have been thinking about when I do this, because with me, as with many people who draw, visuals are a memory. I don't actually remember so much words or statements and things. I remember what I drew, and then I remember what I was thinking about when I drew those things. That's how I remember things. That's how I associate memories. I associate them with thoughts and feelings and with images rather than actual words, rather than actual events. Sometimes I'll look at a picture and I'll think about an actual event that happened, but it's only triggered by that thought. It's not actually triggered by an actual memory of the event. But I look at an image and think, oh my God, that's what happened then. So there's the last bit of that. Oh, and I completely forgot to do the little seeds, didn't I? Let's do those. Those are the most interesting bits. There we are. And I hope you can get the feeling of them being round and juicy and kind of squishy. For a long time I was hesitant about touching papaya because they were so gross looking. Kind of like giant caviar. Let's have a few seeds running around there. Hi again everyone. If you've watched this far, you have watched me fill the last 2 pages in my sketchbook with an avocado and a papaya. Now, as I said, the sketchbook has loads of pages which aren't filled with color, so over the next few months and weeks I will be refilling all the pages and continuing to work in this sketchbook. Although it is technically finished, it isn't actually finished because it is an ongoing work in progress. If you like, I will film some of those pages and share them with you. Thank you for watching.